Hello to Dawn Melanie. How are you today?
Very, very well, Ruben. How are you doing?
I'm very well, thank you. Thank you. Let me chat to you today. So, can you tell me roughly how long have you been a singer-songwriter for?
So, I mean, I've been a songwriter most of my life. I think I started writing songs when I was sort of 9 or 10 years old, started composing on the piano, and then picked up the guitar when I was about 13. Huge part of my life. But professionally, I've been doing this now for a decade.
So, uh, I'm guessing you went to a recording studio, but I'm not too sure about that. But did you go to a recording studio, recorded your debut single?
So I ended up recording a full album straight off the bat because I already had quite a body of work established by the time I got started. So by the time I kind of launched as a professional musician and got on stage and started performing, I already had about 15 or 20 songs that I'd written that were kind of ready to record at that point. So I went to a small local studio. It took me a couple of years to find guys that I really wanted to work with, people that I felt would enhance what I wanted to do, not kind of try and change it to something that they thought it should be. So, yeah, my first album was called Here and Now. And then after that, I kind of, not long after that, actually, we ended up going into COVID. So I suppose it was about a year after I launched that album, we ended up in COVID. And so we kind of then used that time to record an EP and a whole other album, and then to really just release, mix, master, make perfect those things before we released them. And then this last year, I finally managed to release kind of a chunk of all that work, you know. So I recorded another single and released that. And then I released my second full album and another EP. So this year has been a very busy year of music release for me, but a lot of this music was music that we've recorded over the last sort of 2 years or 3 years.
So, can you tell me more about your debut album?
So the debut album was Here and Now, and it was very much light, very much infused with the kind of sounds of Africa, a lot of what we call Muscandi, which is African folk music. And I had an amazing group of musicians who came and featured on some of the songs. I had a group of what we call isiskatamia, which is a cappella, basically a phenomenal a cappella group, come in and do vocal harmonies on some of the tracks. I had Guy Buttry. Anyone who knows Guy Butry's music, he is an amazing, amazing instrumentalist, phenomenal guitarist and sitar player. So he featured on two of the tracks, and he's a absolutely like world class, award winning musician, and that was a real honor to have him add his pieces into what I was doing. So that was a real blessing, and that was kind of Here and Now. And Here and Now really was just trying to capture the African essence of where I live, of where I've grown up. And it was like a starting point for me, and very uplifting songs. The lyrics were all very like motivational and very uplifting. And then my second album, which I released in January this year, was called There and Then. And There and Then is a lot more kind of inspired by my ancestry and my cultural roots. And that would be very much sort of Scottish and German. So the music was very much more Celtic and a lot more of my sort of Celtic folk inspired music, a lot more fingerpick guitar. The music was a lot darker, moodier, and a lot more sort of folklore and fairy tale from Europe and from Scotland and Germany, and from the northern hemisphere rather than from where I am in the southern hemisphere. So that was There and Then. And those two albums are sort of so very contrasting, but yet at the same time, they are the pieces of who I am put together in music.
So, can you tell me more about your latest EP called For Africa?
Absolutely. So For Africa features 4 tracks, and it's really, some of them are a little bit, and they're all very uplifting tracks. So Africa Rising is about the coming together of Africa as a whole nation. Africa as a continent is very diverse. It's had a lot of influence cultures from around the world because it's had a lot of its countries at some point be colonies of other places from the world, everywhere from Germany, Portugal, the UK. They've all held colonies here in Africa, and all of that culture has infused with the local population of Africa and created a very artistically, creatively diverse space. It's obviously created a lot of war and friction too. So Africa Rising is kind of a song that calls us together as a united people, regardless of our origins and regardless of the conflict, to remember that we are all just reaching for the light. And so it's a really powerful anthem of unity for me. And that's the main track off that EP. And the next track is called Balega. And balega in Zulu means to run. If you're gonna balega, you're running fast. And it's a bilingual track, so it's partly in English and partly in isiZulu, and it features the African Sons of God, which are the amazing isiSkatamia group that I got to work with on the first album. And it is really a story about two boys that I became friends with and the journey that they each went on and the sort of trials and tribulations of growing up in kind of rural Africa. And it's a very emotional song for me because obviously it's quite a powerful story, but it is also a very upbeat sort of African track full of very African sounds. And then the next one is Promised Land, and Promised Land really is about how Africa is in so many ways a land of great beauty and a land that has all the rich desire, from food through to gold, all the resources you could possibly need to thrive, live here in Africa. And we just need to recognize that we are already within our own promise. And that one features Guy Buttrey again, and he features on that one on the sitar, which is really adds in just such a magical sound in the track. And then the very last one is called Be the Light. And Be the Light is again just absolutely about, it's about the journey that a lot of us go through, especially artists and musicians, where we kind of maybe get a bit depressed and we find ourselves falling into these sort of cycles of depression and then rising and shining again. And it's a reminder that for each and every one of us, we can be the light. It's also a little bit tongue-in-cheek because here in Africa, we have what's known as load shedding. And load shedding means we very frequently have no light. So it's a little bit tongue-in-cheek at the fact that we need to find alternate sources of energy and alternate sources of light and inspiration in an otherwise sometimes quite literally dark province or country.
So are you working on any new music?
So absolutely. This year has become my year for collaboration. So today, in fact, we released my first collaborative track that I did with artists from the Northern Hemisphere. So Jukka Rottinen is from Finland and Joe Brady is from the USA. And we did a collaborative track, which, as I said, we released today. And that track is called Cold. And it's a really very cinematic piece. And it's a duet between myself and Jukka, with Joe being the musician and the composition and the songwriter on this particular track. And then I'm working on one that is a little bit more sort of alternative rock inspired with a band from the US. And then I've got sort of another very African one called Mamela that I'm working on with a local band. And then a few of my own. I've got about 3 or 4 tracks of my own that I'm hoping to record this year too and release. So definitely a full year of music creation and release ahead. So, and it's quite exciting because it's very mixed genre. It's especially because of the collaborations. There's a lot of diversity in it. And it's kind of ranging everything from sort of something more bluesy through to, African folk, African sort of Afro-pop, Maskandi, and then my own stuff, which I'm still battling to figure out what exactly genre it fits into. But it's beautiful stuff. I'm very excited about it.
So What's it like being a independent artist for you?
It's definitely been challenging. Mostly, I think, because independent artists don't get a guidebook on how to market music. And I think in this day and age, that's one of the biggest sort of things that we have to learn as artists. And I think obviously as artists, we're generally not particularly good at marketing. That's a skill that most artists find challenging anyway. So as an independent artist, you don't have a media team doing it all for you. And that has been a skill that I've only really recently learned sufficiently to do it properly. So when I released my first album, it was a bit like throwing out the music into the world and hoping it would catch people. Like going fishing and just, hoping for the best without any idea of skill or technique in release. So I really had to learn from that experience and learn that you can't just throw your music out into the world. You really have to learn to market it. You've got to use your social media platforms correctly. You've got to really develop a network of people that you can connect with and you can share your music with on a global scale. And that's definitely been my greatest challenge, I think, as an independent musician. Making the music's easy. It's getting it out into the world and really getting it heard that's tough and a skill to be learned.
Yeah, definitely. A lot of hard work being an independent artist. So, can you tell me if you've got any upcoming gigs you want to promote?
So I've been actually planning a tour currently, which would start here in KZN, and I would have one show here in KZN and then travel through South Africa to Joburg and Pretoria later on in the year. And that's going to be towards the end of August. The venues are still being confirmed, but I've decided to do something a bit different with this series of shows because I've realized, again, through marketing my music, I've realized that people nowadays are not, they can listen to music on Spotify, they can watch of live performances. There's got to be something more that pulls them out of their comfort zones and out of their houses and actually gets them to show up at a show and pay the ticket fee. Decided that this was going to be a bit more theatrical, and I've called the tour the Fairy Tale and Folklore Tour. And it's kind of going to be a little bit like a masquerade event where people are encouraged to dress up as characters from their own favorite fairy tales or their own culture's folklore. And I'm going to be giving out prizes to the best dressed and giving away merch. And I really want to make it an event that people participate with. A lot of my music is about folklore. It's about fairy tale. It referenced mythology from cultures from around the world. So I really want people to embrace that and to really join in and participate and be part of the show. So that's my plan for this one.
What about coming back and do some gigs in the UK? There's a bit of a jaunt from Africa, get on the plane and do all the logistics side, but any chance coming back to UK at some point, near to the future?
I definitely do, especially because my album and my most recent EP, I've probably had more radio plays in the UK, Ireland, and Scotland than I have here in Africa. The music has definitely found more of a home in the UK, and I have had an incredible support from the UK. And so it's definitely on the books for me to travel back that way and to come and put on a few shows. And the plan for now is that it will be in the UK itself and in Ireland, Scotland, and really just to touch base with all the people that have supported me along the way. And very, very happy to be doing that at some point in time in the future.
That's good to hear. So finally, can you tell my listeners, we're going to find you on your social media?
So you're going to be looking for Dawn Melanie, and that's Melanie. For some reason, a lot of people think Melanie is actually my name, but my name is genuinely Dawn Melanie. Dawn is not just a cool hippie title I gave myself. So if anyone is looking for me, they're going to find me Dawn Melanie, and that's on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, Spotify, TikTok, every streaming platform you can imagine. It's all out there to find. And also on Bandcamp. If anyone is really looking to support music, independent music in particular, please do go and check out Bandcamp. It offers you a much more tangible way to support art and music. directly than a system like Spotify, for example.
Yeah, I think Bandcamp is very good for supporting independent artists like yourself.
Absolutely, yeah. And if anyone's keen to check out, I do also have a podcast called The Diverse Creative, which you can find on my YouTube channel as well.
Thank you for me chatting to you today.
It's been an absolute pleasure chatting to you too.
Enjoy the rest of your day.
Yeah, you too. Thank you so much, Ruben.
Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye.